Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls, and welcome back to Goosebumps Revisited, a series where I break down a classic Goosebumps book and any episode that goes along with it. I will also be totaling up some of our Goosebumps cliches and classic moments. This week, I will be visiting Monster Blood 3. I wasn't really looking forward to Monster Blood 3, and I won't pretend I've enjoyed it a whole lot. I felt like it was better than the sequel, but only marginally. Evan remains an unlikable protagonist, and there just isn't much to get excited about when the first two books already had plots stretched so thin. I don't think it's worth reading if you haven't yet, but considering the final book in the series is Monster Blood 4, you might just have to power through it. Despite a lackluster story, the cover of Monster Blood 3 is fun. It kinda lets you know exactly where this book will be going with the consumption of monster blood and a giant Evan. I like the reappearance of Jacob as his classic red Converse, and the use of some darker colors. I also enjoy that we get a glimpse of the destruction a giant Evan will cause with some crushed swing sets. I just wish the story was as much fun as the cover was. The 2003 slime border works for me. I like that we get some bright green slime on the border, because this is a Monster Blood story after all. They also brighten up the image in general, which works given the use of brighter slime on the sides. There's no later 2000s version to check out, but Monster Blood 3 did get a couple of pieces of merchandise, including a bundle and a Monster Blood pack, which came with 3 Monster Blood books and some slime. It also had a school folder using the cover of the book, and it managed to also get itself an essential pog. I thought I'd mention this book is probably the lowest quality one I got from my drunken eBay haul. It's from Aurora Town Public Library, and it made its way to me from New York, which is kind of fun. It's definitely lived a very rough life, but I think it being the lowest quality book I got fits the contents of the story pretty well. Our front take says, Evan's growing up way too fast. I like this because it serves as a warning that you're about to get 126 pages of Evan Ross nonsense. The back take says, it's the slime that never dies, and it's more like the slime that Evan and Andy won't quit fucking around with. Okay, it's time to read the blurb on the back. Evan can't stand babysitting his genius cousin Kermit. Kermit refuses to play video games. He won't even play Frisbee. All he likes to do is hang out in the basement doing strange experiments and playing mean practical jokes on Evan and his friend Andy. But now Andy's found something that will teach Kermit a lesson once and for all. It's green, it's slimy, and it comes in a can marked Monster Blood. Okay, now let's start the summary. The book opens with a poorly done dream sequence, just like in Monster Blood 2, so we are not off to a strong start here. In this one, our protagonist Evan suddenly stumbles across a ball of monster blood just chilling in his driveway while rollerblading. The monster blood begins to bounce and quickly eats one of Evan's rollerblades that he's chucked at it in self-defense. Throughout this interaction, he's reflecting on the events of the first two books, but Evan is rewriting history a little bit because he describes Cuddles, the hamster terrorizing the school, which happened, but then goes on to say that Trigger, his dog, ate some monster blood and grew so big that he picked up Evan with his mouth and buried him in the backyard. That didn't happen. In fact, he's just describing the lame opening sequence from the second book that also turned out to be a dream. If I can remember this detail from the last book, so should Stein. It's notable that Evan doesn't remind us of how the monster blood was destroyed previously, once by killing a witch and a second via expiration date. This is probably because the reader would be left to wonder, why was there a need for a third book when the second book was clearly barely sustainable as is? But here we are, so let's just end this dream sequence. The monster blood picks up some speed and proceeds to run Evan over in a chapter cliffhanger. Can you imagine if Stein actually decided to off Evan in the first chapter and then shifted focus on a new main character? It'd be like in Friday the 13th Part 2 when Jason kills our sole survivor, Alice, from the first film in the opening sequence. That's a Monster Blood sequel I can support. Sadly, Stein does not go there, and Evan is just daydreaming while suffering through a green Jell-O snack. He politely asks his mom if they could buy any other color of Jell-O besides green going forward, and she just responds with, Evan, you're weird. I think this is a valid request regardless of Monster Blood trauma, because lime green Jell-O is easily the worst flavor to me. After some more Jell-O talk, we are hoisted into the main plot of this book. Evan has to go babysit his 8-year-old cousin Kermit, who is a scientific genius according to Evan's mom. We don't get any clarification on what a scientific genius entails, but if it's anything like our other Goosebumps scientists, they're essentially wizards and anything can happen. I'm also wondering why this super genius child needs to be watched by Evan, who we've solidly established is basically the exact opposite of a genius, and that's putting it kindly. I think Kermit should probably be watching Evan. I have to admit though, the next exchange did make me smile, because Evan goes on a rant about how Kermit made one of his concoctions yesterday and ended up melting Evan's shoes, and his mom can only respond with, I wondered why you came home barefoot yesterday. I don't remember his mom being this airheaded in the past, but I'm here for it now. Evan heads over to watch Kermit, and on the way he continues to reflect on how much he hates his cousin. He just doesn't understand how Kermit can get so much joy out of mixing various chemicals when I can't even mix chocolate milk. Again, I'm left wondering, why would anyone leave a child in Evan's care? He also mentions Andy, his spunky BFF from the first two books, sometimes watches Kermit with him to help pass the time. We then learn this sequel is bringing back all the classics because Kermit's next door neighbor just so happens to be Conan the Barbarian, our bully from Monster Blood 2, who was thrashed by a giant hamster. This near-death experience hasn't changed Conan though. He's still a dick, and we have a scene where he wants to beat up Evan for both looking at his yard and then for not looking at his yard. There was no winning in this situation for Evan. Kermit comes to the rescue with a mysterious beaker of dark blue liquid and tells Conan to back the fuck off or he's gonna throw it on him. Conan wants to know what the liquid will do, and sadly it's not acid. It is, however, an invisibility potion. I can already tell that Kermit is the kind of ridiculous mad scientist that I can get behind. He ends up throwing the liquid on Conan's chest, but instead of making Conan disappear, it just ends up shrinking his shirt to the point it briefly chokes Conan before he can get it off. The shirt continues to shrink on the ground until it fully disappears, but now they have to deal with an angry half-naked Conan. Conan even says, "That was my favorite muscle shirt," so now it's personal. We don't get to see the violence, but we jump to 2 days later in the cafeteria, where Andy lets Evan know that she likes his new crooked nose, so we can only assume that Conan broke Evan's nose again. His jaw too, apparently, cause he hadn't taken a bite. His mouth wasn't working exactly right yet. It kept going sideways instead of up and down. Evan is like a Looney Tunes character, because I remember in the second Monster Blood book, Conan literally stuffs him into a basketball basket like he was in Space Jam or something. Maybe I'll just picture the rest of this story as some sort of messed up cartoon world that Evan resides in. We're then reminded that Andy's not like the other girls. Andy didn't dress like most of the other kids in their 6th grade class. She liked bright colors. A lot of bright colors. Today she wore a yellow vest over a magenta t-shirt and orange Dayglow shorts. Yeah, cause you know if there's anything middle school kids hate, it's bright colors. She's such a rebel. I do love Andy's commitment to repping Dayglow 3 books in a row though. Get that sponsorship money, Andy. Oh, it gets better. Andy's actually a trendsetter. When Andy moved to Atlanta in the beginning of school last year, some kids made fun of her colorful clothes, but they didn't anymore. Now everybody agreed that Andy had style, and a few kids were even copying her look. Where would 90s fashion be without Andy? Evan thinks Kermit set him up with Conan and knew the mixture would ruin Conan's shirt and result in Evan being pounded. In fact, he feels very passionately about this, like he's literally pounding his fists on the tables and shouting, to the point where the milk is spilling everywhere. All Andy can say to remedy the situation is, "Your cousin Kermit is a weird little dude." I think the same could safely be said about Evan. Actually, Andy just decides to go all in for no apparent reason, and thinks that they should bust out the Monster Blood on Kermit to teach him a lesson. Evan freaks out at even the mention of Monster Blood and wants to know where Andy hid her can, because if you don't remember, our shocker ending of Monster Blood 2 involved Andy getting a new can of Monster Blood from Germany as a surprise from her parents. Yes, Monster Blood 2 really was that stupid. She responds with, "Well, I put a little bit of it in that tuna fish sandwich you just ate." This prompts another freakout from Evan, and I was kind of hoping she actually did just so we could get this story rolling, but sadly this was just a prank. She reveals that her can is hidden safely away, which actually just means sitting on a shelf in her basement. Given the prior experience with Monster Blood these kids had, you'd think there would have been more of an effort to secure it, but I guess carelessness like this is why we have 4 of these godforsaken books. Evan goes back to eating his lunch, and we pause to discuss green fruit roll-ups, and I can't help but wonder if this is some sort of product tie-in.
What do you get when you combine the irresistible taste of fruit snacks with the spookiness of Goosebumps? New Goosebumps fruit roll-ups with scary peel-outs. And fruit by the foot with creepy Goosebumps story teasers. So deliciously unusual, everyone will try to get their hands on them, but they're only around for a limited time. So what's really scary is running out.
Here's my own corporate tie-in. If you like old Goosebumps media, look at my Goosebumps flashback shorts, because they're basically just shit like this. Anyways, we hop back to after school with Evan and Andy preparing to watch Kermit. They descend into Kermit's mad scientist lair in the basement, where they're greeted with a sour smell and Kermit suddenly screaming, "It's gonna blow!" in a chapter cliffhanger. Evan tries to flee but trips over Dogface, the family sheepdog. He asks this dog's name is Dogface. Stein was ahead of his time on this one. Andy is unfazed and knows Kermit is just trying to scare them. Dogface is hiccuping in the corner, and we learn that Kermit intends to cure his hiccups with a special potion. Evan draws the line at animal experimentation, so the attention shifts towards Andy's mosquito bite. Without getting permission, Kermit proceeds to pour his shrinking potion on Andy's arm. Andy shrieks for a bit, but we soon discover that it actually worked, and it made the bite disappear. Andy suggests that Kermit bottle this shit up and sell it, but Kermit can't remember the formula. Gee, I wonder where this story could possibly go. We have a substance that grows and grows uncontrollably, and a magic shrinking potion. We shift our focus back to hiccuping Dogface, and after a few pages of Andy tricking Kermit into doing her math homework, and some potions changing various colors, Dogface drinks the newest potion. This is in spite of Evan's dramatic attempts to stop it from happening. The hiccups are cured, but now Dogface is running around like an excited puppy, crashing into various things in the lab while the kids are like, "No, stop!" for an entire chapter. This culminates in Aunt Dee arriving home and Kermit blaming Evan for the mess. Evan and Andy then have to spend the next 2 hours cleaning the basement while Dogface watches them hiccuping. Aunt Dee lets Evan know that this is his last chance or he's fired. I don't really get why this is treated like a threat, because Evan clearly doesn't want to watch Kermit for $3 an hour. Andy's not very good at it. Being fired sounds like a win. 2 days later, Andy calls Evan up and is pissed because it turns out that the math problems Kermit did for her were all wrong and Kermit tricked her into failing. This apparently is enough of a reason for Evan to agree to use the monster blood on Kermit for revenge. The next chapter literally opens with, "I changed my mind, I don't want to use the monster blood." Okay, cool, thanks for wasting time, Stein. We're then back at Kermit's basement where Evan and Andy have demanded Kermit go outside to get some sunshine. To their surprise, he agrees, but he wants them all to drink some orange soda first before going out. Andy and Evan are idiots and agree to drink whatever this little maniac hands them without second thought. They head outside to play Stein's favorite game, Frisbee. While playing, Evan and Andy begin laughing uncontrollably, and Kermit reveals that he gave them a laughing potion. This kind of sounds like something I would have tried in college. They can't stop laughing hysterically over every little thing, which kind of begins to scare Evan. Conan appears on the scene, and we spend a chapter of him thinking Evan and Andy are laughing at him. This results in another chapter cliffhanger Looney Tunes style beatdown, and Andy gets on a Looney Tune action this time because Conan proceeds to chuck her into a tree so high that it takes her forever to climb back down. This brief chapter ends with Evan agreeing to use monster blood again on Kermit. We're back in the basement, and Kermit lets Evan know that he told his mom what a horrible babysitter he is, and he tells Evan about all the horrible things she had to say about him. I really don't get why Evan tolerates this, and what he gains from watching this child other than an excuse for a third monster blood book. Oh wait, I guess he's saving for a Walkman. Evan proceeds to perform a distraction. Well, he makes his best attempt at one. He pulls out a chocolate bar and slowly eats it in front of Kermit, hoping to distract him with lines like, "Chocolate bars are cool." Great work, Evan, you're a natural. Andy slips some monster blood into Kermit's mixture while he continues to mix it without noticing, because he is so transfixed on Evan and this candy bar. The mixture in the bowl begins to overflow, and instead of being monster blood green, it's still yellow from whatever Kermit was making. Kermit is excited at the sudden growth at first, but quickly gets scared when the monster blood dough ball thing is suddenly larger than him. The monster blood is moving at an accelerated pace this time, because usually it takes chapters and chapters to see this type of growth. The monster blood glob breaches the ceiling and has Kermit cornered, while Evan and Andy watch with sadistic pleasure. Then the chapter suddenly ends with the monster blood concoction exploding. Yellow goop is everywhere, and instead of being upset, Kermit is stoked. He realizes Andy must have added something to his mixture and wants to know what it was. He also reminds Evan that the mess will be blamed on him and he will be fired, so Kermit really doesn't give a shit about this failed prank. We then have lots and lots of conversation about sticky goo and hair that's hard to get out, that I'm choosing to ignore. Andy then suggests they vacuum up the goop, cause if vacuums are known for anything, it's how well they handle sucking up liquids. All of a sudden, Evan starts to feel weird. His whole body is tingly and he doesn't understand why everything seems so small. He realizes he's growing quickly, and it's probably the result of accidentally eating some of the monster blood mixture in the explosion. Stein then throws in this trash explanation for why Evan's clothes are growing also. The monster blood splashed on your clothes too. That was lucky. They're growing with you. I get why we can't have a giant naked 12-year-old running around in this story, but wouldn't everything in the basement be growing if that's how this works? Like, we spent pages and pages discussing how literally everything and everyone is now covered in the monster blood mixture. Evan notices Dogface going in for a monster blood snack, but stops him by picking up the sheepdog and carrying him in one arm. Keep in mind, Evan is supposedly in the basement. What kind of basement has 12-foot ceilings? Also, shouldn't he be getting out while he still can fit? Evan and Andy then spend a few pages rehashing, "Oh no, what will we do? You're so big, and monster blood so bad," like we've heard 1,000 times at this point. Making 3 books where the plot is basically, "Oh no, now big," is a choice on Stein's part, Jesus Christ. Evan finally realizes he needs to get out of the basement, but shocker, he can't fit up the stairs in the chapter cliffhanger. We then spend a chapter as Evan attempts to squeeze up the stairs and out the door. It's thrilling stuff and totally worth its own chapter. He eventually squeezes out and makes it into the backyard. In the backyard, he overhears Conan tormenting 2 kids. He looks over and sees Conan swinging a baseball bat at these 2 kids' heads and decides to intervene. Evan snaps the baseball bat like a toothpick, and Conan immediately knows Evan has eaten monster blood like Cuddles the hamster did in the last book. Evan proceeds to pick Conan up, who declares he's afraid of heights and demands to be let go. Evan sticks Conan in the top of a tree like Conan did to Andy earlier, and revels in Conan's tears. He decides being a giant is kind of fun, and heads off to cause some more destruction. This fun comes to an end when Evan feels something crunch underneath him, and Kermit declares, "Oh no, you squished Andy!" He of course didn't, and it's just Conan's skateboard. He decides to head to the park so he could potentially show off to other kids. Along the way, he accidentally crushes a car, and it occurs to him he should walk more carefully in case the next car has a person in it. No shit, Evan. At the park, he gets a kite out of a tree for a kid, and they declare he's Super Evan. Evan is loving the attention, power, and fear he is causing. He stops to play baseball with some kids from school who never wanted him on their team before. We ignore that it's probably a lot harder to hit a tiny ball with what essentially is a drinking straw to Evan at this point, and he scores a home run for the first time in his life. This sequence lasts pages and pages, and you can tell Stein is having fun with it, so I guess at least someone is. This chapter ends with Conan arriving on the scene with a bunch of firefighters and the police. Eventually, a crowd grows and is becoming more and more hostile towards Evan, and one of the officers wants to know if he's from another planet. Evan lets them know just Atlanta. All of this attention is starting to get to Evan, and he begins shouting for all of them to get away from him. This results in the officers declaring him violent and that they need to take him down. They try blasting him with fire hoses, which Evan notes could be effective if they actually hit him, so he takes off running. As he's running, he has to watch for tree branches to the eyes, because he's tall, but not that tall. On his escape through town, he can hear the sirens in hot pursuit of him. He's realizing it's not easy to hide as a giant, and settles on crouching behind a lumber pile in an abandoned lot near his house. While catching his breath, he's startled with a, "Got him!" Evan thinks he's been had, but it's just Kermit, who declares, "I knew you'd hide here, Evan. I'm so smart." Kermit is not only a child genius, but a confident child genius. Andy appears too, and they both inform Evan that the entire town is after him, because Conan told everyone he's a violent alien set on destruction. Kermit gleefully tells Evan that they even have guns. Evan watches Andy scratch her arm and suddenly has an idea. I wonder what that could possibly be. They head to Kermit's house and Evan crouches in the backyard with Dogface, waiting for Kermit and Andy to reappear with the shrinking blue liquid. When Kermit finally returns, he nearly drops the beaker, but Evan is able to save it and pour the beaker onto his hands. I would have thought drinking it would have been the solution, but I guess not. Evan is horrified to see that the beaker only has a couple drops though. Kermit declares, "Don't worry, he can make some more," and rushes back inside. Andy then says she'll go clean up the mess in the lab from earlier, so when Kermit's mom gets home, she won't be mad. Andy might want to sort out her priorities. Kermit reappears with some blue liquid and Evan proceeds to rub it all over himself. After a few minutes, Andy and Kermit seem concerned because Evan is not shrinking, but turning blue instead. He also has the hiccups now, so Kermit heads back inside the house for a third time while Evan hiccups so loudly he's sure the cops will find him. Once again, Kermit reappears with blue liquid, and this time Evan rubs it all over. He starts to feel tingly. He thinks this is good news at first, but once again this potion has gone wrong and Evan is now covered in feathers. Andy comments he's like a big blue bald eagle, and Evan fails to see the humor in the situation. To make matters worse, the police are now on the scene. For a fourth time, Kermit heads back inside to make something blue. The cops are creeping around the house when Kermit reappears again, nearly drops the mixture again, and again Evan rubs it all over himself, except this time with feathery hands. There's a loud pop and suddenly Evan is back on the ground and normal sized. The cops ask if they've seen a giant kid running around, and they innocently tell the officers no. I guess Evan's feathers vanish too because they don't comment there being a chicken child in the backyard. Kermit's mom shows up and the three children tell her that they've had a terribly boring afternoon. We jump to that night when Evan is awoken from a nightmare that involved being chased by giant rats that looked like Kermit. When he goes to hop out of bed for some midnight water, he realizes the floor is miles away. He looks at his clock and sees that it's also enormous. He squeaks angrily about Kermit, which alerts Trigger. The dog picks Evan up in its mouth and delivers him to Mr. Ross, where Evan informs his dad, "I think we have a little problem." An obvious ending to a lackluster book. There's no direct episode pairing for Moth to Blood 3, so I went with Awesome Ants because the description involved turning ants into bloodthirsty giants, so it seemed fitting. We have two notable actors for this one. The first is Michael Yarmish. He voiced Arthur Reed in Arthur during the first 5 seasons, and came back to voice for the final episode like 20 years later, which is pretty cool. Our other notable actor is Mpao Koho, who played Ben because he was on The Expanse and happens to have one of the grossest deaths in the Saw franchise.
I call it the rack.
Maybe I am.
Let's start the episode. This episode opens with some questionable restaurant hygiene.
Gross.
So, what are you doing for your son? That's disgusting! Ah! Oh, gross, look.
This episode is already going great places.
Oh no, Dave, watch out!
I like that Lance is talking to these kids like they own the ice cream parlor.
Name is Lance. Trade his ants.
Lance is giving it his all.
This guy's weird.
Oh, yeah. Amazing creatures, aren't they?
That ant was made of monster blood. See? It ties in.
The queen? Destroy the nest.
I like that after experiencing an infestation at an ice cream parlor, David is like, I need some of these for myself.
That's weird.
I got a delivery here for a Dave Warren.
That's me.
Here you go.
I love that the mom is just gonna let him keep this beastly thing.
No, it's worse.
This is some technology.
As you can see here, they've already started to build a hive. Down here is the queen's nest.
This poor worm never stood a chance.
Here we go. Nice and juicy. All for breakfast.
No way!
I think this hot dog has seen better days.
Oh, my brothers don't even eat that fast.
Uh-oh, he's high as hell right now.
No thanks, Mom.
Look at this beautiful CGI. This is probably how I'd react too.
David, do something! What are you doing? Oh no, not in the cabinets too! David!
It's Thanksgiving for these ants.
What are we having for dinner?
Turkey.
Jump scare for ants.
Gotta get out of there right now, young man!
Maybe the ants ate the whole neighborhood.
Anybody!
All these giant ants are kind of fun. It was only a dream.
Dave, wake up or you'll be late for school!
Oh wait, David was the ant all along. That's a fun little twist for a fun episode.
Huh? And it was your job to kill them.
Don't let them hear you say that.
It's mine!
Overall, I thought Monster Blood 3 could have been worse. We kinda sidelined the actual Monster Blood for a book about a giant Evan and his evil genius cousin Kermit. This could have been easily tweaked to be its own Goosebumps entry without bringing Monster Blood into it and forcing us to spend more time with Evan. I thought it was an improvement on Monster Blood 2, but that's not exactly saying much. I just find both Evan and Andy to be really unlikable protagonists, and I really didn't mind when Kermit was fucking with them. My favorite parts of the book were Kermit's various potions, and the idea of an entire town hunting for a giant alien Evan, so this one squeaks by with 2 out of 5 bowls of green jello. I just find it truly sad that this series will end on Monster Blood 4. Okay, on to our totals. Monster Blood 3 didn't have any vomit or shoulder scares, but it did have a little of everything else. In Getting Jiggy with the 90s, we had 5 90s moments. These included rollerblades, a Walkman, shorts down to the ankle, day glow, and fruit roll-ups. This raises our total to 108 jiggy 90s moments. Monster Blood 3 opened with It's Only a Dream. This was incredibly reductive and involved Evan having a scary daydream about Monster Blood and essentially the same kind of opening as Monster Blood 2. I hated it. This raises our total to 12 It's Only a Dreams. In It's a Prank Bro, I counted 3 pranks. We had when Andy pretends to put Monster Blood in Evan's tuna sandwich, a fake-out explosion from Kermit, and Monster Blood and Kermit's mixture. This raises our total to 57 It's a Prank Bros. Asshole Victim makes another appearance this week, and just like in Monster Blood 2, involves Conan because this book lacks originality. Conan falls victim to Giant Evan, and honestly gets off pretty lightly considering Evan could have just crushed him. This raises our Asshole Victims to 18. Monster Blood 3 had a total of 11 chapter cliffhangers, and they were on par with the rest of the book. Nothing special. This raises our Goosebumps total to 349. The clunky cliffhanger award for this book goes to chapters 1 to 2 with our dream fake-out opening because I think it's lazy as fuck. Shocker ending. Our big twist of this story can be seen from space, but it's when Evan wakes up and discovers he's used too much of the Shrinking Blue Potion and is now small enough for Trigger to haul him around in his mouth. This raises our Goosebumps series total to 23. Well, that's it for Monster Blood 3. I'm relieved to be free of Evan Ross for another 6 months or so. I just think this story didn't need to be a Monster Blood story. It could have been of an entirely different kid dealing with his evil genius cousin. Next week is It Came From Beneath the Sink, and I don't know why I'm so excited for this one, but I am. I have positive feelings towards it, and I don't really remember much at all. There's also a very good chance I'm mixing it up with Egg Monsters from Mars, so there's that. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Monster Blood 3. Did you like it better than the second one? And why do you think Stein decided to subject us to 4 frickin' Monster Blood books? Also, what did you think of my clips this week? Were you able to figure out the themes I was going for? I decided if Stein can reuse his material for this one, so can I. Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
The pride, the love,